Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Susan Kundrat. She is a registered dietitian and wellness expert who is a lifelong well-being enthusiast, award-winning college professor, and an enthusiastic advocate for inclusive health and wellness. She's also the author of Eat, Move, and Groove, as you can see here on the screen. Unlock the simple steps to lifelong nutrition, fitness, and wellness. So, gosh, that's my brief introduction to you. But the question that I love asking all my guests, as you might know already, how would you introduce yourself, Susan? And what was the main intention and purpose of writing your book, Eat, Move, and Groove?
Well, thank you so much. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy to be here with you. It's a joy to be here with you. And I would introduce myself as a simplified wellness partner.
Yeah.
And I say partner in particular because I do believe that wellness comes from within.
Right.
And my hope with the book and the work that I do is that I can partner with people where they are, help them, assist them, partner with them to meet their well-being goals,
Yeah.
and particularly around nutrition and movement and but holistic well-being as well,
Right.
and do it in a way that's simple enough to be able to do every day or most days,
Right.
and a way where people feel good about themselves. Because as a registered dietitian, I've worked with a lot of people who have not had necessarily positive interactions with food in their body,
Mm.
and also get very confused over everything that's out there. And so my goal with the book was to take the things that I believe are knowns and most important and have the biggest impact on our well-being, simplify them, make them accessible and usable and doable, so people can feel empowered and able to put it into practice.
Mm. Yes, yeah. That's that's something that I really love about life itself when it comes to the expression of humans kind of simplifying things. And I love the way you have in the book like three parts: how to eat, how to move, and how to groove. And I have to tell you, the part that really resonated with me, as I said off record, is
Mhm.
how to groove. You list there are 22 ways to get your groove on. But before that, you actually chapter 11, you also talk about the 2211 groove framework.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. This is really something that, of course, encompasses everything, right?
Yes.
The framework is basically almost everything that's in the book, but summarized in a way, if I understood it correctly. But talk to me about that, the framework.
Yes. Well, you can see from the front of the book that the
Yeah.
groove is the base, because I do believe, as I know you do as well, that
Yeah.
our well-being, what's inside, is most
Mm,
important,
mm,
and certainly our spiritual well-being, our emotional well-being,
yeah.
psychological well-being,
Right.
our brain health, our heart health,
Mm,
all those things really form the base.
right.
And with that, those 22 ways to get your groove on, whether that's being in nature, whether that's nurturing our spiritual health, whatever that means to each of
Right.
us,
Right.
whether that's being in community, finding a purpose in life, all those things I believe are the base of well being.
Mm,
And if we have those things that work for each of us, kind of in order, I should say, then it's much easier to eat well and to move well and to plan your day. In the book, I talk about
mm.
the 2-minute miracle, because that's how
Yeah.
simple I think things can be. And,
Yeah.
taking a couple minutes for yourself to plan your next day in terms of what you may want to eat and how you
Right.
want to move, but
Right.
also having that base of the groove
Mm,
allows us to look more closely at our total well-being.
yeah.
And so sometimes I think we don't prioritize that part as much.
Right.
People
Right.
get very interested in exactly what they're eating and counting calories and
Right.
tracking the time for exercise. And those things can be very healthy to do, but
Right.
sometimes they can overshadow the groove, and that
Mm,
puts us back a bit. And so thinking about all three together was something I thought about and worked on for probably 5 or 6 years before the book
wow.
came out.
Yeah.
Um, and in my world, as a registered dietitian, with most
Yeah.
of my background being in nutrition, it was a real joy for me to take a look at the bigger picture of
Mm,
taking care of our well-being as well.
yes, I love that. And that is, some people call it holistic. It's the same thing, right, Susan? So it's just basically, from my point of view, is not just embracing parts of life, but life as a whole. Kind of being able to see the big picture. That is has been for me a huge guiding light, per se, or what basic principle that I could see the big picture, and that for me it has been interesting because it's I started with a lot of trauma in childhood and then trying to move out of that, finding my groove in a sense of eating healthy and exercising. There was like those habits, they had to be established in a way for me to be able even to start my journey of taking a look at my psychological well-being and the healing process when it comes to emotions. So that was very interesting. That was the very beginning, but then I thought it would be it. That was the limit. Eat right, exercise, and then I would have been okay. But it didn't work. So yes, spirituality played a huge part, and of course some therapy, and then community. I love that you include that here.
Mhm.
This has been huge, and that's number 3 on your list of 22. I love that too, and I
Mhm.
love the number 22. I have to say, there's
Yes.
something about again doing it together, being in community.
Right.
So, talk to me about the impact of that. Have you seen it personally? This community coming together when it comes to wellness and helping one another to heal in every way.
Oh, definitely. I've spent my career as a clinical professor working with students in nutrition and dietetics, kinesiology, pre-health professions. And there's no question that what we learn in the classroom is one thing, but
Right.
then, you know, finding ways to help students get into the community, something we call service learning,
Yeah.
particularly where students are learning about things in the community and
Right.
able to see the impact they can make, again, when partnering with community members, whether that's at a food pantry or at a community center, wherever that might be. This is what impacts students the most, for
Right.
sure.
Right.
We know this, and I've seen that firsthand. A lot of my work has been at the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee,
Mm,
where there were a lot of needs in the community, and students came back changed.
mm,
And so that's one experience that I think is so impactful.
yeah.
But also, I talk about finding your community of
Mm,
generosity.
yes.
And yes, there's a wonderful food pantry in Milwaukee, at really a whole food center. And being there myself, it's changed me when I've been there.
Mm,
You come to
yeah.
give, but you also receive.
Right.
And those types of experiences, whether that's volunteering in your local area or being part of something bigger, is so important. And just
Right.
finding your, as some of my friends call it, your tribe of people,
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
have your people together, right, who can
Yeah.
support you and
Yeah.
you can support them in need. And so I do think that, we live in community. We're social beings,
Right.
and that means something different to everyone. Of course, some of us need a lot of that social time and some people don't.
Right.
But knowing that we're not in this alone, I
Mm.
think is quite impactful.
Yeah, Susan, that's a huge one, isn't it? To know that.
Mhm.
Yeah, the understanding is important, but I love the idea that we can deepen our understanding and get to the point of experience and
Yes.
know that the impact that it has. And it has been My experience profoundly. And the interesting thing is that even meeting people here, I've been hosting this podcast for about 5 years now, and of
Hmm.
course, it's a marketing agency as well. But meeting people and having this um, deep, meaningful connection with them, it has changed me in so many ways. It's just incredible. I cannot say enough. That's online. I just can't imagine meeting in person, having positively impacting one another's presence and physiology when we are together. I love the idea. In psychology they talk about nervous system regulation, co-regulation, that we can co-regulate each other's nervous system. So that's such a beautiful
Yes.
thing, isn't it? I know it's psychology, but it
No,
connects
and
to everything again.
yes, and I just have to agree with you 100% because this last year, ever since the end of August, my wife and I have been on this book tour. We call it the Eat, Move, Groove Wellness
Yeah,
Tour. So we were
yeah.
all up and down the East Coast in the fall, and now we're in the South, heading southwest and up the West Coast.
Uh,
And we have both commented that the number one major thing that we love about this is all the
mm,
people we're meeting, the relationships we're building. Some are new, some are people we've known, but we're reconnecting with.
right.
And the book is, of course, an important part of what we're doing, but the travel and
Oh,
the
yeah,
relationships are the most
yeah.
important part. And
Yes,
I
yeah.
think we looked forward to that, but I don't think we were prepared for the power of that for ourselves. And
Yes,
so, as much as
yeah.
I love speaking to groups, big and small, and
Mhm,
training students and community members, I love doing that. But it's really the relationships
mm.
that mean the most to us. And that's what's life changing, truly.
Right. It is, Susan. Yeah, it is I mean, I cannot say enough about this type of connection. And I guess because I have the contrast of interacting in heavy relationships there that I could not express myself or they were not really fulfilling,
Yes.
then it was so powerful to see the difference when I'm in the presence of people that are all about health, wellness, well-being, healing, spirituality. Just the heart opens and it's a beautiful thing. And
Yes.
of course, we don't want to push anybody away because I think we need each other, especially those who are going through some, I don't know, tough times in life and challenges. They do need people that can, of course, help them. But there's
Yes.
something about when you talk about finding your community, your own people, that I have to agree without pushing away anything.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think that does take stepping back and self-reflecting to find out, who we are as humans and the type of people we want to be around and need to be around.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes we don't take that time,
Mm,
and so we don't
mm,
realize some of our relationships aren't as
mm.
nurturing as they could be or
Yes.
they should be. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's where one of the things I learned a lot about this book, writing this book, is the individual, how important it is to respect people's
Mm.
individual needs and desires and where
Yes.
they're coming
Yes.
from. And
Yeah.
we talk about that a lot from the nutrition end, being very respectful of
Yes.
cultural differences with food and how comfortable
Right.
people are with food. And
Right.
that's so important. But I think as a whole, listening to where
Mm.
people are and helping them. My hope with the work that I'm doing is that I can provide what I call um, a framework with foundation, but not necessarily, a prescription. So,
Right.
in other
Right.
words, give people a bit of a framework with the 2211 plan for eating
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
moving and supporting well being, but not necessarily a diet or not necessarily, again, a prescribed, you
Mm.
must do this type of situation.
Right. So it's in a way, it's a suggestion. It's an inspiration. I love the word inspiration, actually. I think it fits really well. We're just inspiring others to take care of themselves by taking care of ourselves in a way by doing our work. I mean, you've done beautiful with this book. I mentioned off record too. I love how generous you are with the information. You're very detailed. It's very simple at the same time, and it's very generous. That word keeps coming back to me. You know, the concept of generosity, of giving, and not only taking, or the giving taking. This dance, it's just beautiful.
Well, I appreciate
So
that.
I wanted to gosh, I have so many topics here. There's a question that I wanted to ask. I want to mention that you have written another book, right? The 101 Sports Nutrition Tips. I just want to smuggle this in. And another question that I had for you is um, about the main, if you could disclose this on this conversation today, like what are the misconceptions about eating healthy? That's one. Misconceptions about movement and exercise. We won't talk about groove because I think there's no misconceptions there
That's
in a way.
right.
But talking to me about those two and what are the obstacles to overcome them?
Well, I think some of the misconceptions, particularly around eating, are that you have to be perfect or that you
Right.
have to be
Yeah.
very rigid with your
Yeah.
eating. There's a lot of information out there saying foods are good or bad, or you should
Yeah.
never eat these foods. And that's just not my perspective. And quite frankly, I just don't think it's true.
Yeah.
And so again, the framework for the eat part, the 2211 eat part says, yes, we do know, for example, eating a plant forward diet is very
Mm,
helpful. Eating a
yes.
lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and things like that we do know, but still it's difficult for people to do. So that's where
Right.
the framework really helps readers do that or listeners
Right.
do that. And I think another misconception is you have to go all one way or all another way.
Mm,
For, a good
yeah.
example of that is, the carnivore diet, for example, saying, well, I'm going to eat a ton of meat
Right.
and not eat some of the other fruits and vegetables and whole grains, for example. And
Right.
that's not necessarily great balance either.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely we do need to get enough protein at every meal. I'm a big believer in that, partly because we
Yeah.
want to maintain our lean mass. So I talk a lot about
Mm,
fueling muscle.
right.
And if we do that, we feel better, but also we stay strong. And this is
Mm,
particularly important for women, I
right.
believe.
Right.
Fueling to stay strong as opposed to fueling for
Mm,
looking at the scale.
right.
So another misconception is the weight being the important thing. I just don't think that's true for most people.
Right. I love that.
Wherever we feel good and feel
Mm,
energized and are able
right.
to move our body in ways that feel good to us and we can sustain,
Yeah.
wherever that number is, great,
Right.
that's fine. It shouldn't be a
Yeah.
number that comes first. It should be something that is more of a side effect of taking
Mm,
care of ourselves. So
right.
I think if we can shift that perspective, which again, particularly for women, is often difficult, away from the weight, away from the scale, and more inward. How do I
Mm,
feel? How's my
mm,
strength? Do I
mm.
feel like I've got good endurance?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
enjoying my food? Am
Yeah.
I eating foods I like? I
Yes.
talk about love foods in the book, eating
Yes. I
foods you
saw
just
that.
love to eat because they're luscious to you. They
Yeah.
taste good. They might be part of your childhood.
Yeah. Mm,
These are very, very important things, and they go right along with optimal nutrition.
right. I love that, Susan. That's wonderful. Yes. It's from the inside out. Yeah. Just coming from a place of that is true and authentic to us. And then, that makes me think about a tree, how the trees they grow.
Hmm.
It goes both ways, right? Out and in. It goes under the ground with the roots and then the part that we see. But it's if the roots are not healthy and if they don't grow long enough to, I don't know, to gather the nutrition, whatever it is that they need, then the outside it won't look as good too. So
Right.
it's so obvious. We see that in nature that it really starts within. But for
Yeah,
some
it's a really
reason, we
good
have
point.
forgotten that wisdom.
Hmm. There's so much wisdom in nature. And I think, another good example of that is looking around where we live and saying, well, what
Yeah.
foods are in
Mm,
season? What's
yeah.
available?
Yeah.
What could we eat that might be more local?
Yeah.
Those things are very natural and are very helpful from a nutrition end too. And like you mentioned,
Right.
fitness, what might be some of the misconceptions. Um, yeah, I worked with some excellent exercise physiologists on the book, some of my colleagues whose
Yeah.
specialty area is fitness.
Yeah.
And what they really boiled everything down to
Mm.
is finding joy in how we move and
Mm.
building movement into our day so that it just becomes
Yeah.
our norm,
Yes.
and also being creative with movement. And in
Yeah.
the book I talk a lot about, of course, finding your why, which we know there are a
Yeah.
lot of books on that,
Yeah.
but taking it a step
Mm.
further to find your how.
Yeah.
And an example, I had two workshops yesterday here in Silver City, and we talked about, some people love to cook, some people love to move in a group, in a class.
Yeah.
Others prefer to do things on their own. They
Yeah.
would rather not cook, but they would rather get food somewhere. And
Yeah.
no matter your hows, you can make things work. And
Mm.
and I think that we need more yes. We need to give more yes to people and less no when it comes to eating and moving our bodies and overall well being, so that there's a much bigger picture of what this might look like. And it doesn't have to be a set way for any one person.
Yes, that's another thing that's super important. That we don't try to imitate or to copy. That happens a lot. I heard with I'm not so. I have a team that does the social media work, so I don't really watch TV or do social media. But I have heard of, especially young people who are always looking at pictures of other women, especially women too, and comparing themselves to them and trying to be like them. So that never works because we are so unique. We can't really, I mean, the more we embrace that, our own, I call it energies, but it could be
Yes,
DNA, it could be our own predispositions. I don't know what they call it. But there's something about each one of us that's very unique. It really is. And
yes.
it's lovely, isn't it? To be.
It's
It's nature, isn't it,
it's
Susan? Nature's
nature.
like that. So different. It's so beautiful.
Right, right. It reminds me of
Yeah.
when I was young, and I've always been an athlete.
Mm.
And I remember probably around sixth or seventh grade, because I grew tall very quickly and
Right.
and
Yeah.
was bigger. And that was the first time I thought, I don't know, we must have been weighed at some point, and I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't know I weighed so much more than some of my friends.
Right.
And by the grace of God, my mother said, I
Mm.
mentioned it to her, and she said, "Oh, Susie, we have big bones in our family. That's such a good thing. And they weigh a lot more." And that was
Yeah.
all I ever needed to hear about that. And
Mm.
I'm so
Yeah.
grateful because,
Yeah.
that comparison starts early. And
Right.
sometimes we just need someone to pull us aside and say, "You're fine. You're great.
Mm.
Don't worry
Yeah.
about that. Be
Yeah.
yourself." And when most of my work as a professor and as a sports nutritionist through my years has been with athletes and active people, and one of the mantras, no matter if I was working with a college athlete or professional or Olympic athlete, I would talk to them if they were concerned about their weight or where they were, and I would always say, the goal really is to be the best athlete you can be within your body. And just saying
Right.
those last three words, within your
Right.
body,
Right.
really made a difference. And I think that's something for us to all think about within our own body.
Yeah.
How can we embrace well
Mm.
being
Mm.
in a way that it's meaningful to us?
Yeah.
And of course, as we get older, and I work
Yeah.
a lot with the 50 plus crowd,
Right.
as we get older, there may be other issues we're dealing with. And I reflect on that in the book. If you have high cholesterol, for example, these might be foods to eat more often. If you have high blood pressure or prediabetes or so. And so there certainly are things that we can be aware of to, put in our diet more often or think about our movements more often. But overall, it really comes down to embracing again our own bodies and our own selves.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. I love everything that you said, how you expanded on that, your own experience too, and what you said about starting early. That's true. Those are the imprints, right? With the mental imprints, psychological
Right.
imprints, and that it's not easy to, let's say, to let go of. So a lot of times it gets us in a very uncomfortable place before we can, right, realize that we have a belief system that's not working. You mentioned God. What is? I mean, I said that off record too. I'm sweating again. I have to say this on camera that I'm 48, and I mentioned about the perimenopause. Gosh, it's like
Right.
you start sweating, but it's hot here though. It's not that it's really hot. I don't know if it's the sweats from that hormones or it's because it's hot in here. My husband
Sure.
didn't put the AC on, but anyway, it feels good to sweat. It's good for us anyway. I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
gosh, it's
right.
uncomfortable, but ah.
That's right.
So the idea of God, talk to me for a moment about your own perceptions of reality. What is spirituality? What is God? And how that, those understandings have impacted your view of yourself in life.
Yes. Well, for me, I grew up quite traditionally Roman
Yeah,
Catholic. So
yeah,
that's my base. And I think of it really as my culture in a way,
right.
because we learn things through our experiences as a kid. And so one of the things that I've been able to bring with me from that time is thinking of my body as something I wanted to care for. And that was
Yeah,
something I learned very early on as part of
yeah,
my religious tradition.
yeah.
And of course, there could have been a lot of guilt around that too as a child.
Yeah,
But what I've brought with me or chosen to bring with me from that time is the appreciation
mm,
of my own well being
yeah,
and how that does encompass my spiritual well being too.
mm,
And excuse me, taking time for
yeah.
that. For me, some of that is being in nature
Yeah,
and
yeah,
being
love that.
quiet and being able to
Mm.
reflect upon being one little piece in this big world.
Yeah,
But I think the older I get, spirituality is probably more and more important to me because as we get older, we realize some of us,
mm,
the realities that we are here physically now, and we won't always be here
right,
physically in this
right,
space as we are right now.
right.
And
Yeah,
so for me, that's been a good time of reflection and thinking about, a lot of what I learned when I was a child of caring for other people
yeah,
and how that, the more I think about what I'm doing, and even on this road trip, really
yeah,
where our goal is to, again, partner with people to help them feel better about themselves and create their own wellness. And to me, that's very spiritual
right,
because to me, that is more than just work. It
right.
is,
Mm,
trying to do whatever I can with my
mm,
gifts and experiences
yeah,
to make the world a better place. And that is very important to me with my
mm,
own spirituality. I think, too, when I mention nature, one thing that I've done more is being more in tune with my own breathing, being
mm,
more in tune with how my
yeah,
body feels and how my body moves and what feels good to me, which feels very spiritual to me as
right,
well.
right.
And finding that time for silent prayer and
Mm,
meditation
yeah,
and connecting with other people who also believe that the spiritual part of ourselves is very valid and
mm,
important. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the background that I had as a child, and I'm
yeah,
grateful that I've been able to find parts of that have carried me through.
right. Wow, beautiful. All of that. Yes. When you mentioned nature, yeah, there's something about because we are not apart from nature, and it seems like we have somewhat believed that, that's a misconception that we are apart from the natural world, but we are one and the same. Exactly everything that happens in nature that we see, that cycle, it's so similar with what happens in the body. It's not different. And that's the reason why we feel connected spiritually with the whole, because of that. I love what you
Yes.
said about the connecting with others, yeah, helping others. That's, to me, that's the that tree, the what we see from the tree, the part that we see, not the roots. It's knowing that everything is interconnected, that we are. It's almost like God is the essence for everything. I
Right.
know it feels that way very much from my own mystical experiences. It's the substance of everything. So once we know that from experience, it's so much easier to do the work that you're doing, for example, just to help others and trying to help as many as we can, as many people as we can, and
Yes.
connect with them in a meaningful way. Um, the question that came to me was about purpose. A lot of people, they look for this, sense of purpose in life, and some of them have given up because they feel like it's not for them. What is your suggestion, advice, not advice, I would say suggestion, when it comes to finding our purpose? And what does it feel like, Susan?
Mm. Oh, that's a wonderful question. And um, I think it is a mix of a few things. And this is something I use with my students as well. Finding out where your passion is, what you're
Yeah.
passionate about, finding out what you are good at, are very
Mm,
interested in and can understand,
yeah.
and finding out what moves you inside, what really
Mm,
not only you're passionate about, but what really moves
mm,
you, something
yeah.
that really makes
Yeah.
you feel drawn to it, I think is very important. And then knowing
Yeah.
that that can change throughout life,
Right.
and again,
Right.
for me, I think it takes also time of reflection. A good example is, I was working full time, teaching full time,
Yeah.
trying to write the book in the midst of doing all that. And it
Yeah.
was actually my wife who said, I think this book is very important. You have these
Mm,
vision
yeah.
and these ideas, but
Yeah.
it needs some space. It needs
Right.
some time and some space. And to move in that direction,
Mm,
it wasn't going to happen while I was so busy in
right.
a full time job. So my intent was not to necessarily stop teaching full time, but I did end up doing that. I'm
Yeah.
still involved at Milwaukee,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I needed that space to then research and write the book. And I did a lot of my writing camping.
Wow.
I would be
That's
by
wonderful.
myself camping in
Yeah.
nature. That
Mm.
was so motivating for me.
Yeah.
And it really shifted my work from a much, I should say, kind of driven, busy schedule to stepping back, and
Mm.
yet that fed my passion
Yeah.
for this idea of simple, positive, inclusive,
Mm.
doable well-being.
Mm.
And so I will say that sometimes finding your purpose takes some real reflection and stepping back
Right.
and being willing to make a big shift in that road and
Right.
go in a new direction. And that's scary
Right.
to
Right.
do.
Right.
But I look at what we're doing now, traveling across the country in a
Oh,
camper van. I mean,
yeah.
I
That's the
couldn't have thought
best.
of anything more amazing. I know it doesn't
Yeah.
sound great to everybody, but we're
Yeah.
having a ball. And
Uh,
that would never have happened had I not stepped away from what my life was at the time. Had the
mm.
support of all kinds of people, of course, to
Of
do it.
course. Yeah.
But
Huh.
so I think the reflection piece, at least for me, is something I've not always been very good at. I've not been good at saying, wow, I'm going too fast here, or this is too much stress for me.
Right.
But doing that and giving
Yeah.
yourself that space to reflect and say, wow, what's working and what's not,
Mm.
helps us move in the direction of our purpose, I do believe. And a lot of that is spiritual, I think.
Yeah.
Listening.
Mm.
I fully believe that one morning I woke up with this idea for the 2211 plan that the book is based on.
Huh.
And I don't think I thought of it. I think it came to me,
Right.
and it was from God. It was more of a spiritual coming to
Mm.
me saying, okay, I have a responsibility now to get this out. And that might sound a little crazy to some people, but I just don't believe it's all me, even in this book. I think that it was
Mm,
bigger than that.
mm,
But I did have to listen and step back and make some major changes to my life to
mm.
be able to self publish the book, hire all the
Right,
editors and designers and people I needed to learn how to write a book like this, go back to school essentially
right.
to train. And that whole process has been wonderful because it's allowed my passion to come through in a way that's new.
Right. Gosh, thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful. Yes, a billion times to reflection, to listening. There's something
Yes.
about listening, listening to life, listening to our own bodies, listening to the heart, the soul, as we call it, and divine inspiration. So thank you for saying that too, because that's exactly what I thought when I saw the number 2211. There's something about it. I said, wait a minute, this is spiritual. Yeah, because numbers, there's something about numbers, numerology, and some people believe even sacred geometry, like the one you see behind the flower of life, that
Yes.
it feels for some people it's very too rational to be spiritual because it's all about specific forms and everything's measured perfectly. But that's what God is. It's perfect, isn't it? So when I think about number, you cannot do 2 plus 2 has to be 4, and that's perfection. So I think that's for some reason I've been very attracted to sacred geometry that has to do with numerology and
Yes.
specific forms. And sure enough, yeah, it's the perfection of the spiritual world that really it comes across that way as a message. I don't know if that resonates with you, but it really comes
Yes.
across that way. Perfection.
Yes.
Perhaps not as an expression of as humans because I don't think we can be perfect in that sense given that the body will disintegrate right one day, will dissolve, won't be no longer here as you mentioned too, so it can be perfect in that way. But there's in so many ways it can be perfect, like in the way that has inspired you to do this work, to go traveling and to know more about yourself. I mean, that to me, it's a miracle in itself.
It
I have to
is.
say,
It is. It is a miracle.
isn't it?
And you know, part of my motivation too is the frustration that I have felt from so many clients and patients and people I've worked with
Right.
throwing up their hands and saying this is just too confusing, or
Yeah.
it's and really trying to work at thinking of a simplified plan again that everyone can
Mm,
start over every day,
yeah.
no stress, take care of yourself in
Mm,
a way that folks can remember. So the 2211 plan is memorable both from an eat and a move standpoint. And the movement piece is simple because we know we need to move our bodies. And I think for a lot of people, doing it for long periods of time at one time works. But
mm,
for others, even 2 or 3 or 4 minutes here or there, adding that up and focusing both on the what I call the heart pumping
mm,
movement or
yeah.
cardiovascular, and then the strength or stability or stretching piece, and having both of those as part of the day
Yeah.
in simplified ways really takes some stress off the
Right.
exercise, or as some of my colleagues say, the E word that they really don't like to say because
Right.
we really prefer we
Mm.
like the E word eat, but we prefer the M
Yeah.
word for movement. And
Yes.
that's part of the genesis of eat, move, groove.
Right. Right. And that's so true, though. I see a lot of people around my family too when it comes to exercise. Yeah, they create a lot of resistance. That's interesting to see. But life is movement. It's so simple. I mean, such a basic foundational component, isn't it? Everything's moving. Even we see our thoughts, they always changing. The body changes over time. Everything changes, which means everything is moving.
Right.
It's not static in any way. But for some reason, yeah, we have seems like I don't know. I think there's something to do with resistance, fear too. Some people resist to change.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resistance to change, which means resistance to movement and resistance to life itself. I mean, I can't help it but bring it almost like almost like a feel of a philosophy into it. But it is true though. It's how it works. So how, I mean, we're almost at the end. I could talk to you forever about these things, but what is your main, let's say, um, not way, but what is the method to get somebody to do what they have to do for themselves? I'm wondering if that starts with the belief system, Susan. Is that something that you tap into it as well, changing the way we think about ourselves in
Sure.
life?
Yes, I think finding motivations, helping coaching to find motivations for making change is very important, and perhaps dealing with some of the misconceptions,
Hmm.
particularly around nutrition and
Yeah,
exercise,
yeah.
and helping folks understand that small changes are really beneficial,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
doing something every day, no matter how small it is, because when we do something, we feel better about ourselves, and then we can do
right,
something more and something more.
right,
And so I think those are things are really important, and changing the mindset is a slow process.
right.
And so I think
Yeah,
sometimes people feel like, well, I should just be able to do this because it's what I'm supposed to do, or I'm
right,
told to do it.
right,
And change is not that easy. And
right,
so,
right.
looking at small steps, there are a lot of books out there, and I talk about it in Eat, Move, Groove as well. The concept of piggybacking is one of the first ways to do something. A group I was working with last night, we were
Mhm.
talking about getting up and down, perhaps doing a few
Mhm.
squats or movements before a meal because you're going to eat the meal. So
Mhm.
you get used to doing something else, and maybe you do two or three or four,
Yeah.
and maybe when I'm in the kitchen cooking, sometimes if I have something in the oven, that's when I'll do some little bit of
Yes, I
strength
love
or
that.
balance in the kitchen. I mean, these piggybacks where you're already doing something,
Yeah.
and thinking of it more as giving yourself something as opposed
Mhm.
to having to do something, I
Right.
think is very helpful.
I love that. So you're giving something to yourself, and
Yes.
so you don't feel obligated, yeah, or forced to do anything. It's
Right.
basically
Right.
giving, not having to do. I love that. That's a beautiful mindset. If we can all have that, and I also love the suggestion about doing like small things. You're
Yes.
right. I'm always doing things, the push-ups. I mean, I have almost a gym in my house,
Yeah.
so I kind of go in all rooms. I have something that I can pick
Yes.
up, the kettlebell, whatever it is. But it's interesting how it came from habit. I have been doing it since I was a young teenager, and then never left me. Is that something that for some people it seems to be so much harder because they don't have they have not created a habit. It has
Right.
not become a habit. So, can anyone at any time establish a new habit like this, Susan?
Yes, and in fact, when I was in the midst of writing the book and doing some work with experts looking at vision of what this
Yeah,
is, and getting some help there from a visionary standpoint, one of the things that came out of that was, transition. Eat, Move, Groove is great for people in transition
yeah.
because we're already
Ah,
transitioning, let's say, from a lot of students going into college are really enjoying the book and the concepts because they're starting to think of how they're taking care of themselves now on their own.
right,
Or
right,
people going into retirement, that's a transition time, or into menopause or
right,
perimenopause. That's a
right,
transition time where other changes are occurring. So, this
right.
might be a wonderful time to piggyback
Mm,
a new well being
mm,
plan. And
yeah.
so I think looking at where those transitions might be,
Uh,
moving, new job, kids graduating
uh,
from high school, whatever it might be, it's a great time to step back and give yourself the gift
uh,
of caring for yourself. And
yes.
so
Mm,
that's a wonderful way to
mm.
think about moving forward in your own health and well-being. But as we know, for a lot of people, they have to believe they're worthy of it, and
Ah,
so it
yes,
it
that's
probably
true.
goes back a little bit farther to that.
Yeah.
helping everyone understand that, we're all worthy
Oh,
of maximizing our health
yeah.
and well-being however it works for us.
Mm,
And that's a true fact, and
mm.
something that is probably the beginning, really, to start there.
Oh my God, Susan. Yeah, you tapped into something that's very powerful and very true. Yeah, it takes that understanding that we deserve something in order to care for it. That is so true. If we don't think we're worth it, then yeah, that was my
Yes.
case. Yeah, in different areas of my life.
Sure.
So it's so true. So it's amazing how one thing's connected to another. We cannot address one part of self without really embracing the others. It fascinates me. Like I try with the body first, kind of doing all the diet and exercise,
Yes.
trying to get a. It's almost like having a physical medicine for emotional problem. It didn't work, so it's like trying the same thing with the spirituality, right?
Yes.
Trying to cure ourselves emotionally with spiritual medicine. It doesn't really work. Sometimes it does, though, I have to say. For some people, it might, but it's not really, it doesn't seem to be something that is in alignment because
Yes.
every part of self has its own realm, per se, that has to be taken care of at that level. Not,
But
it
what
feels to me that way. I'm not sure if I'm,
Yeah, I mean, what I love about the work you do is giving all of that honor and respect, because I think through periods of life, like you've mentioned, and I know in some of the work that I've read that you
yeah,
have done, I think talking about that and how at times of life things are more difficult or maybe more focused on physical and how we
yeah,
look
right,
versus emotional or
right,
spiritual beings,
yeah,
that's all real to people. So
mm,
I really love how you talk about that and give that the due respect, because I think everyone struggles with that and where to
right.
put our energies.
Mm,
And so I think just recognizing all that and talking about it like you do is so nurturing for people. So I really appreciate that, all that you are doing.
oh my God, I appreciate you and all that you're doing for saying yes to this encounter today. And I apologize for the lateness and for the
Oh,
for the
no.
hotness around here. But yes, yeah, it takes conversations. I think I go back to inspiration. I think there are two ways really to learn in life, or to become wiser. One is through suffering, going through
Yes.
our own experience in suffering, or being inspired by others, listening. Like you said beautifully, I love the concept of listening to life, listening to others, listening to our own inner being. There's something about that. And to me, it's an inspiration too. So it's like listening has to do with being inspired by something and then taking action, because
Yes.
that's where all actions come from, right? Some sort of inspiration. Do you want to make a comment about that, Susie? I do have the ending questions for you, but how do
Yes.
you feel about that? This idea about inspiration and suffering as a way of changing, of
Well,
growing.
I definitely would agree with you. I think one of the most important things we can do that's very hard, and I think for periods of my life where I didn't have things in balance and they
Right.
were very challenging times, um, sometimes we just feel bad about those times and we feel it's easy to get into the negativity about it.
Yeah.
But having
Huh.
some
Yeah.
space and some time to really reflect and say, okay, what did I learn from that? And
Yes.
how can that help me?
Yeah.
For me, I know one of the big things I learned when life got too busy and I was very stressed at different periods.
Yeah.
Now I try very hard to not be overly busy. And in fact,
Mm.
when you're driving around the country in a camper van, you can't be in a hurry because, first of all, you can't go
Yes.
that fast. And
Yeah.
secondly, you have to
Uh-huh.
be aware that things are going to happen and slow you
Mm.
down. And that was an agreement my wife
Right.
Audrey and I made when we decided
Right.
to embark on this. And that's
Right.
actually been really healthy. We both have
Mm.
said that's been very healthy for us. We
Yes.
can't be in a big hurry anymore.
Right.
And that is nurturing. And I don't think
Right.
I ever could have recognized that without
Mm.
going through periods where I went too fast. And so I agree with that.
Mm.
And the hard part sometimes is to recognize that suffering, not allow yourself to feel guilty about it, but just say that
Yeah.
is part of who I am. And I can learn from that, even if that was a very painful part of my life. And so
Mhm.
I do think that, again, a lot of it goes back to giving yourself space to reflect and slowing
Mm.
down enough
Mhm.
to take that time and think about the direction you're going, and are there ways you want to move that in a new direction, or are you hearing, are you listening to what's happening in your life to say, wow, this is a perhaps a change that I need to make or want to make or something to try.
Yeah.
And just taking that breath does allow us to open ourselves up to taking better care of ourselves.
Right. E- Even by the simple act, right, of breathing easily and deeply, like being conscious about our breathing. That's true. Yes. Yes, suffering has been my biggest teacher. Yeah, a lot of experiences, they were very difficult, but as you said, being willing to listen, to reflect, and ask the right questions. What can I learn from that? That can be transformed into wisdom. Because then, if we don't do that, then it becomes a waste in a way. Suffering was for didn't really did its job, because it feels to me like whatever we go through in life is trying to tell us something, and
Yes.
that's when listening comes in. If we are listening, we'll learn, we grow. And if we are not listening, then it seems like we repeat the lesson. That's what I have
Yes.
for my own life. I've been repeating that over and over
Yes,
again
I
until
know.
I learned.
Yes,
That was
I
tough.
agree. I agree. Yes.
So we are almost at the end. It has been a joy. It has been wonderful to meet you, Susie. Thank you so much. You have this beautiful, peaceful presence. It's very calming. Your voice, I mean, it's just beautiful. Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Um, and before we say goodbye, I want to mention again, so your book is on Amazon, where it's Eat, Move, Groove, Unlock the Simple Steps to Lifelong Nutrition, Fitness, and Wellness. And you have a second book there too. And I love on your website says 22% of book proceeds support nutrition security and wellness. That's beautiful about the giving. Yeah, there.
Yes, we believe in that 100%. So that's been wonderful to connect with groups and organizations around the country and beyond,
Mhm.
to offer those donations. And it's
Yeah.
part of our mission, of course,
Mm.
is to give back in that way.
Yes, I love that too. So the website is eatmovegroove.com. It will be clickable, so you don't have to memorize it on the podcast notes. But is there any questions that I didn't ask you? Anything that you left unsaid for this conversation, Susan?
Well, I think you did a fabulous job, and I'm so appreciative. One of the things that we can mention, and maybe they'll be in the show notes, is that we get a lot of
Mm,
requests. Obviously, you're on YouTube, and we get a lot of requests for,
yeah.
yes, if I did take 5 minutes, how could I take a break and move my body, or a quick,
Mm,
easy recipe? So that is something we're working to really build out, is our Eat,
yeah.
Move, Groove YouTube channel too. So I think your listeners might find that a nice
Yes.
resource and very helpful as well. And that's been a lot of fun. I am fortunate enough to have about 15 interns from across the
Wow.
country who are working with me and teaching
Yeah.
me and learning from me at the same time. And so they're doing a fabulous job. And so love to hear from people in terms of what will help them. And so I'm always anxious through the website or um, Instagram. We're at Eat Move Groove to be in contact and let us know what we can be doing to make well-being again simpler, easier to put into practice, doable. And so I love to talk to folks and hear back about recommendations. And I always feel like when we're in this work, it is a constant communication back and forth.
Right.
And again, that's that partnership and
Yes.
collaborative work that is so
Mm.
important.
Yes, I love that. I live for that. Collaborations,
Yes.
yes. It is a wonderful way to grow, isn't it? Together. And
Yes.
that's the main the key, actually, grow together. Yes, I'll have the YouTube channel here too. So we'll be on the podcast notes,
Fabulous.
YouTube. I'm just going to make a note here. And my last question for you is actually before that, your book could have been easily titled Simple, Doable, and Positive, or maybe Simple, Positive, and Doable. I like those three words too. You kept repeating them throughout the conversation as well. Yeah, they are very powerful though. There's something about simplicity and positivity that people respond to them, to these concepts fast, almost like something in us. It's almost leaning toward more of that simplicity and positivity,
Yes.
and something that we can do with what we have in the moment. So
Yes.
that's a wonderful invitation too. Thank you for the inspiration and that. um, so before we say goodbye, this is a question that I pretty much ask everyone, but not lately. What three experiences you wish everyone to have before they die, before they lose the body?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. One is to feel true joy.
Yeah.
The second one is to feel connection and that warm
Mm,
connection with others.
yes.
And the third one is to feel comfortable in your own body. No matter what
Yeah.
that body is, no matter where that body's been or what it's been through,
Yes.
to be able to breathe and feel
Mm.
comfortable within ourselves.
Oh my God, Susan, I love that too. No matter where the body has been, that's that's something that we don't have to think about it, but just like you said, self-compassion, acceptance, and just
Yes,
wow, I love that too. That could be a book though in itself.
it could. It could.
Let me know if you
We might
write
need to
anything.
collaborate on that.
Yes, that sounds wonderful. Right? Tell me about it, about
Yes.
where the body has been through, and the mind, and the heart.
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
Thank you so much again for your beautiful presence, for your contribution to well-being, to positivity, to simplicity, and the beautiful inspiration about generosity. You come across very much like peace, generosity. I mean, all these concepts come to mind when in your presence, just being
Oh,
here.
thank
It's
you so
interesting.
much.
Yeah.
It's been
Thank you so
lovely
much
being
again.
with you.
I feel the same way. And we'll talk again. We'll be in touch soon, Susie. Bye
Wonderful.
for now, my dear.
Bye bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.